So thanks everyone for finding us and joining us on Zoom. I know it was a different time and a different platform, but hopefully this will be better as we move forward. First, for those of you guys that are in and around Hurricane Laura, I hope you and your families are doing as well as you can. We have a full agenda today. We'll get started in a minute, but I know that's a pretty difficult situation on top of everything else. So as far as these go, the link that you used to get into today will be the same link that we'll use for the next several sessions. I think we set it up so these run until October 31st, right around October 31st. So that will make it a lot easier so everyone has the same link, and then you're not trying to chase down a link and make sure you have the right one. And Zoom is just a little easier for us too. So with that, the first thing I'll share, and I'm gonna, so if you're not familiar with Zoom, there is a Q&A feature, so that's what I'll monitor once we start. I'll try to monitor the chat as well, but that makes it a little, that's gonna make it a little more complicated. So if you have questions, just drop them in the Q&A and we'll go through there. So the first thing I'm gonna show is the FAQ. I'm gonna share it because the last time I checked, it was not posted yet live, but it is coming. It should be there by the end of the day. But what we did is, so this will go up today, and I'll just kind of scroll through it slowly so folks can see it. These are some of the questions we've talked about in the last couple weeks. These are all related to the new Smart Start. So instead of adding on to the massive document we had for the spring, we decided to use something new and start something new for the 2021 school year. So, one of the first questions was, one of the things we've talked about is, do you need to change Peems codes when you're using contingency plans and kind of those limited duration circumstances because of partial shutdowns or partial campus closures? And as a reminder, no, you don't need to do that. And this talks about that. So another question that had come up over the last few weeks that we had talked about was, counting, how can you count ESY reimbursements and submissions? How do you count contact hours? I was right the first time. How do you count contact hours for virtual instruction, which we did here. Put a link into the homebound waiver FAQ. So instead of rebuilding all of that, put a built-in right there. The conversation we had 2 weeks ago about idea funds to use for PPE. And then last but not least, there was some questions regarding first grade participate in required reading assessments. So I'll leave this one up for a minute so folks can read it. Okay, so with that, I'll go back to so we'll go back to the agenda, and then next, oops, if I select it. All right, so next up was Niloy Gangapadahe was going to talk a little bit and go through the project Restore. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I should be able to allow him to share.
I can't. Ed, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good. I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, y'all. Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm excited to talk to each and every one of you. I have a couple of slides and a video to show, but I don't actually see the share screen button.
Let's see.
That's the one thing with Zoom is that the presenter can't always see what it is that they're sharing. So we'll just, when you start sharing, Eloy, we'll let you know that it's up.
Okay. But no, I'm saying I don't have a button in front of me that says share screen, but let me talk through it, and I'm sure that Ed will send the materials out. But some of you have heard, we're super excited in light of what Ed opened with and thinking about what people are experiencing, thoughts and prayers out to the people in both in the state of Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi around Hurricane Laura, thinking about the trauma and stress that comes with that. And in light of being in a pandemic, what educators have experienced, what all of us have experienced. And so the agency put together a series of videos, and it under the umbrella Project Restore. And the idea is that we want educators to be able to support themselves, their students, and one another with a trauma-informed lens. And so the idea here is that we are opening up 6 videos, plus an introductory video. The 6 videos are 25 to 30 minutes in length, and they will cover different topics. So for example, the first one will be trauma and how it impacts learning. The second one will be understanding your experience as an educator in building resilience. The third one will be understanding your students' experience. The fourth partnerships with students' families. So let me actually go to that. Okay. All right.
You're sharing your screen now.
Okay, awesome. Got it. And so again, the concern and energy around students' mental health and emotional being is at its highest level. And we understand that school systems are looking for support. So the way that we think about it is that you can't separate it from teaching and learning. And there's a ton of resources out there. We're combining the resources around mental health and thinking about ways so that we can continue to be there for educators and students alike and improve student outcomes. And so the videos are created with the lens of having support for in-person and remote instruction. And the beauty of these videos are that once we transition back to brick and mortar at some point during the school year, you can go back and watch the videos, right? The beauty of the videos also are they're paced so that teachers can watch them, or educators, excuse me, can watch them at their own leisure. And then there is a facilitation guide that whether you're a mental health professional or a school leader and you want to watch it over Zoom or actually in person with your whole staff, you can also do that. 2 other quick points. Educators receive CP units for each video. So at the end of each video, you have an opportunity to fill out a quick survey with your LEA information and the region that you're in addition to your particular role on a campus or at LEA. And then you'll get a downloadable certificate. It also fulfills the SB 11 requirement of grief and trauma-informed training. So we're super excited. You know, viewers can watch this at their own pace. I mentioned the facilitation guide. Again, here are the 6 topics. So there's in addition to the 6 topics, excuse me, there's an introduction. And then again, trauma and its impact, your experience in building resilience, understanding your students' experience, and building secure relationships. And the final 2 develop a strong positive classroom culture and then building strong partnerships with students' families. Now I'm going to share my screen and show you a sample of the video, give you a quick glimpse.
Hey, Eli, we're not getting the audio. When you click share screen on there, you have to indicate that you want the audio to go through.
This is more
That's it.
like rapid heart rate or breathing. Dilated pupils and trembling kick in to prepare the body to fight or flee from that threat. This is called our fight or flight response. And it's kind of like pushing the gas. It gives our bodies quick energy to deal with what's in front of us. But When fight or flight doesn't bring sufficient protection, our body goes into a third stress response: freeze. This is more like slamming on the brakes.
So basically, you got a taste of the video. That actually is a 50-second compilation, and I apologize that you couldn't hear the sound of our intro video that basically breaks down this idea about discovery learning, some of the concepts, and the narrator kind of walks through how users will learn the concepts. And then video one, again, talks about trauma and its impact. And so the video will be up this week. We will get information out, usually through the superintendent's call. Really appreciate the support of LEAs here to communicate to individual schools and school leaders and educators to use this resource. And again, there's a facilitation guide for anyone that wants to do it school-wide or combining staffs that I think is really helpful to think about the discourse and discussion. And I think this is something that can be used in light of being in the middle of a pandemic, but again, is an anchor resource that can be used at any time to talk about trauma-informed. And it's innovative in the sense it's a very low lift to be able to just do it sitting in your leisure or whatnot of your home. So we'll get information out through Ed. So if there's any other information that y'all need, please reach out to him and we will get it out to y'all as well.
So Niloy, one of the questions that we got in chat about the video, are the videos going to be set up to describe, are the videos going to be set up to be accessible for visually impaired?
Yes, I don't actually know, so I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I think there are some accessibility that is going on to it, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So I realized that as I was trying to promote people to panelists, I skipped over one of the things I meant to say with the FAQs. So the FAQs are not up yet, but they will be up by the end of the day. That's what we're being told, and they will land just like normal on the web page for TEA COVID. So I just wanted to show them and not delay another week. So just so you guys could see them, but they'll be up on the TEA COVID webpage by the end of the week. So, and then Justin, I know you had a couple updates. Are you there?
Here, I can actually show my face. Great. Yes, updates for today are not really coming from me. I am a facilitator today. Stephen Prater should also be on the call. We had a different webinar earlier in the week where some folks had questions very specific to evaluations and observations during remote at-home learning. And so Stephen's going to weigh in and share some information that was previously shared just to make sure that everybody gets it. But Stephen, are you able to come in? There we go. Sweet.
I'm here. I was debating on whether or not I was going to show my face. So
of course you need to show your face. It's a moneymaker, man. Of course. Stephen is one of our managers on our technical assistance team, and he's also an LSSPC. Now we're getting everybody's moneymaker. Now we're all on there. There we go. Got Ed too. So Stephen is not only one of our managers on the technical assistance team working with our technical assistance networks and some other projects, he's also an LSSP, and so an expert in evaluation. So take it away, Stephen.
All right. Yeah. And so like Justin said, these are some questions that we got from our T-Case group. So here's kind of what we said to them earlier this week. The first question was about classroom observations for when you're doing an evaluation for to see if a student may qualify as a student with autism or an emotional disturbance. They say, are those classroom observations valid during virtual learning, when you're considering if they have a suspected disability? So there's nothing about doing an observation in the virtual learning environment that would make an observation invalid if that's what their current learning environment is. But the question is really more about, does the observation give you the information that you need to answer the referral question? So just like at school, one observation may do it, or you may have to do multiple observations to get the information you need. So for example, if you go at a school and you were observing a student, but they were taking a test, or there was a sub, then you probably would go and do another observation to make sure you gather the information you need. So just like that, in a virtual environment, you may have to do multiple observations to get the information you need. So the key is just that, just making sure you get, observe them across settings. And so you get their behaviors in different interactions, different settings. That's what's important. And remember this is just, the observation is just one piece of the evaluation. So you're going to use that, and you're going to triangulate with different information about different scales and assessments and interviews and things like that. You're going to use all that information to help you make your decision. So it's not, this observation is not just going to invalidate that whole evaluation. And so I mentioned rating scales a little bit. And so that's kind of what the next question was about. They said they wanted guidance on using rating scales such as like the VASC. If the teachers haven't seen the students in months, or if their new teachers don't really know them enough yet to fill out the VASC. And that's not really a new problem just because of remote learning in virtual environments. I mean, that has been an issue even if there were these types of evaluations at the beginning of a year. You know, the teacher may not know that student well enough yet. So what the recommendation is, just always refer to the manuals of those, whatever rating scale you're looking to use, and just follow those recommendations about how long a teacher needs to know a student before they fill it out. So you just have to use your clinical judgment to decide if you can use the tool. And then if you decide you do use the tool, you just make sure and document any limitations that come from the scores due to the way that it is administered. If you administer it in a way that's not recommended by the manual, you need to note that in your evaluation. But again, that's just one piece of data. So use, just like with the observations, just like interviews and things, use all of that information to help make your decision about your evaluation. So just think, are there other people that the student interacts with that you could use the rating scales with or do interviews with? And then looking at their developmental histories, that's going to help you make a lot of these decisions for these students, these specific for evaluation for autism or emotional disturbance. And so the third question, and this is the last one, was specifically about, they wanted to know how can they address these statements with validity? And what they're talking about is those statements when you're deciding if a student may have an emotional disturbance or not. So the two they were asking specifically about is, the student exhibits an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers or teachers, or the student exhibits inappropriate types of behaviors or feelings under normal circumstances. So when you think about these two, and when you're trying to decide if a student may qualify as a student with an emotional disturbance, the other two things you need to consider are, has this been happening to a marked degree and over a long period of time? And so it may be happening to a marked degree if it's something that's come up recently, but if it's something that's recent, that probably means it hasn't been happening over a marked period of time. So just because something has come up recently, you may want to go back and use all that information you're going to gather from interviews, from developmental history and things like that, and decide, is this something that has been happening over a long period of time that you could use that information to make that decision. Sometimes, if students are showing anxiety or depression recently, because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic response and maybe being socially isolated, that could be a little different, and you may not want to qualify a student with emotional disturbance if those kinds of feelings have come up recently just because of this situation. So for those situations, you may want to consider intervention supports. So maybe give that student some intervention and see if that helps their situation, because then you can always monitor them and come back and revisit the situation if it continues to, down a path where they may qualify as a student with special education. So those were the three main questions that we answered the other day. But before I leave, I do want to give one more plug about a webinar that's going to come up from the Child Finding Evaluation Network. So it's a webinar given by Gail Sheremy and Andrea Organoski, and they're very well known in the evaluation world. And so what this webinar is going to be about is they're going to talk about different things that you can do for evaluation. So for example, maybe you can't give a certain type of battery. So if you can't give a battery, then maybe you can give this other battery together, this other types of information. So that's what the webinar is going to be about. And it's going to be on September 11th. And right now, the link's not up to that you can register at, but they gave me the link where it is going to be at, and I'll put it in chat here in a second. And then, so if you go to that link, keep checking it over the next few days, then you can register it. And then after the webinar, that's where they'll post the recording after they give the webinar. So, all right, that's it.
Stephen, you actually have two questions that are related. So,
okay.
So I'll ask just the one, and they're both very similar. So So virtual may not reflect triggers in the classroom schedule or social interactions. So when observing for emotional disability and autism, how can you observe across structured and unstructured settings with peer interactions to determine social factors?
Yeah, so I mean, that's where I think you have to use that triangulation of data. So it may not be possible to observe them with peers or to observe them in different classroom settings and things like that if they're only doing virtual settings. But that's when you can go back and do interviews with teachers from the previous year. You can do interviews and rating scales with the parents. And from that information and from whatever observations you can do virtually, that's how you're going to make the decision. So again, don't just rely on that observation to get that information. You may have to gather it in several different ways.
We also talked about, and Stephen, weigh in on this, please, but we also talked about the possibility of being creative and thinking outside of the box. Is there a possibility, is this child going to be interacting in some sort of situation in which a caregiver could create a video of this child interacting with other kids or whatever that would help give you that information? Again, it's not the same, it's not exactly the same, but it is some information that could be used, especially when triangulated with other pieces of data to make that determination.
And if you get me that link as well, I'll send it out on the next agenda. So
Okay.
we can put a blurb on it for the agenda.
All right.
So the other thing, so we got fortunate. So as we were actually on here, I got a message that the FAQ link was actually put up live. So if you go to the normal special education COVID site and you go under general guidance, what they've done is kind of created this little box at the top to highlight new information for this coming school year. And what I was showing earlier in Microsoft Word is right here with those 5 questions as a PDF. So that's live and active. And I will drop a link to this page in the chat as well so folks have it. The other thing I'll highlight while I'm on this page is we just posted up this webinar right here on compensatory services. So that was done, like I said, it was just posted this morning. We'll get the deck up too, so it has a link to the deck that was used. But this will open up into a YouTube video just like the others have. It's about, oh, there you go, it's 31 minutes long. And we'll get the deck up. Oh, that was not planned. So that's accessible there. Stop doing that. So those 2 things are up. And then the other thing I know we've talked about a couple times, I won't go to the link again, but the Reading Academy expert panel, the applications for that close on the 31st. So if you know anybody that is interested, or if you've talked to people and suggested that they submit an application and they haven't done so, those are due by the 31st. So. Okay, Justin, do you have anything else before we transition? Okay, so for the next 3 weeks, we were able to get to a point where we could even kind of work around some of the issues we were running into with having folks come on and talk about products and supports and services they offer. So we've already set up for this week will be AIM, and then the next 2 weeks, we have some other folks coming on as well. So we'll give Diana is here from AIM, and I don't know if Susan is as well, but I can see Diana for sure. And we will give, oh, they're together. You guys are muted though, so you have no sound. There you go. So we'll give them about 20 minutes to talk about what they do. Materials went out yesterday with the agenda, some materials from them as well as a statewide pricing. And with that, I will let them take it away.
Hi, thanks. Mr. O'Neill, can you guys see the slideshow?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Susan Hauser. I'm a school psych and I'm one of the owners of AIM. And I'm Diana Kenny, also a school psych and one of the owners of AIM. Thanks for your time today. I realize that every minute is precious and you guys are really under the gun. So we appreciate any time at all that we get a chance to talk to you about how things are and what we're doing. AIM is a one-stop shop for special education services. We're built from education for education, and we know that we're dealing with real lives, and so we use real language. We really try to incorporate a bottom-up and a top-down approach when we're providing services or doing evaluations. We're guided by an intense desire to make an impact in our field, and we really prefer partnering or partnership versus contracting, and our focus is on high standards through innovation. So one-stop shop, meaning basically we're essentially a standalone special ed department. Just about anybody that you would find in a district special ed department has a space on our team at AIM as well. We all hold valid Texas licenses, and our home base, in fact, our only base is in Texas. Contrary to the way things are with national staffing companies, our chain of command's visible and obvious, and you'll have, if you work with AIM, you'll have cell numbers for just about everybody that you need to know to make things happen. From education for education, our roots are in traditional public education. All of us, or almost all of us, started out in traditional district jobs, and we have more years of experience in those settings than I'd like to admit. So we know where you are and we know what you're doing right now, and we understand the demands placed on you. We are an education model, not a medical model. This is a list of the services and the things that AIM does that I think are probably most applicable to the group that we're talking to today. And you see things on there that you would expect to see, like speech, LSSP, DIAG, OTPT, AT. But we also have special ed administrators who have been in the field in Texas for a long time and who have either joined us or retired and joined our team. We have dyslexia evaluations and instruction available. We do support of your federal programs. We have SPED teachers if those are needed. And we also do program review and audits. So real lives, real language basically means that while we're professional and everything that we do is legal and consistent with what the feds and the state want us to do, we try to do it in language that both parents and staff understand, that makes it easy for us to problem solve and easy for people to ask us questions. We strive for transparency, and sometimes that creates awkward situations because you guys know it's not always easy to be transparent, but that's one of the hallmarks of the work that we do. A personal goal, and one I think that's held by Diana and some of the other people in leadership, is to bridge the medical and the school world. A lot of contentious situations happen because parents have medical information or have sought medical advice or evaluation, and they don't understand why it doesn't fit in the school world. And it's our goal really to help medical, school, and home all understand each other so we can save time and not have to deal with some of those uncomfortable or contentious situations. Our goal is really to demystify complicated systems and concepts. And we get so used to our acronyms and we get so used to our professional language that you guys know it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the group that we're talking to, or the person on the other side of the table, doesn't necessarily completely understand what we're talking about. So we do a lot of things that are to present complicated things and concepts in more everyday accessible language. And many, I would say most of our services are available bilingually. We work both bottom up to top down. We're attentive to the details, and we enjoy understanding the big picture, and we really work to make sure there's alignment between the two of those things. In kind of the same way, we're both product and process oriented. So it kind of depends on why districts or charters might be consulting us. We might be looking at both of those things at the same time. And there are AIMers available with expertise at both levels, ground level and sky high. So we do really have a desire to impact our field. And we do some things that are a little bit different because of that. Zach, our CEO, refers to the way we train as cross-pollination. And that means that we train speech with DIAG with OT. Or we have special ed administrators working with intern LSSPs so that they understand each other's discipline. And we find that really helps deepen the understanding of what we need to do, and it helps really I think telling the difference between law and procedure or practice. So we do focus on special populations. I know you all do too, that's why you're here. But you know, within special populations, there are special populations. And so that's one of our specific interests, and we really do enjoy working and trying to problem solve with things that are related to the really low incidence populations that happen in our fields. We do extensive training, and it's really, I think, our niche to provide culturally and linguistically responsive services. And that's a particularly close to my heart kind of situation there. Partner versus contractor. Contractor has maybe not the best connotation over the years. We really see ourselves as partners with the schools where we work. Before we start to work any place new, we have a lot of meetings, and I call it calibration. It's really understanding what's important to you and what your goals are and how you work, because we want to be able to fit into that as much as we can. We want to be invisible when we're on your campus, when we're in your district. We want to be able to blend in with the rest of your team, because that makes life easy for you and it makes easy for the students and their families. Our eyes are really always on your system's goal and not necessarily our own. It would seem counterintuitive as a business, but our job is to get you to the place where you don't need us anymore. Our goal really is building capacity in your own system. And so we would really like to leave you with more than you had when we came. So when we talk about high standards through innovation, here are some of the things that we do to make sure that we're sort of constantly pushing things to be the best that we can. We have QA, or quality assurance, for our reports. So we have a team of very experienced and very skilled evaluators and professionals who are reading all of the evaluation reports, not just for the he/she issues, but also to make sure that every report that comes through AIM has decisions that are being made in the same way. There's, to be completely nerdy, that's inter-rater reliability. So we've got that built in. But it also means that when you have something like a DNQ evaluation that's done through remote assessment, you've got a second set of eyes looking at that, making sure that all decisions were made in a way that everybody would agree with. We have university partnerships with UTSA and with Trinity University. So not only do we take their students and train them, so they sort of infuse us with some of their energy, but we have staff members, Diana included, who work as professors in both of those places. So I think that it's definitely a reciprocal kind of thing, is that we get fresh faces, and you guys know what it's like when you get fresh energy on your team. But we also have people who are on the cutting edge of their field, and we are exposed to that, both the coming and the going of the information. And I think that's something that I have really liked about being at AIM. We do a ton of internal PD. My job is to make sure that I have built as much capacity in my staff as possible. And even, for example, even the IT guys are trained on understanding disabilities, using the right language. I made them take the FERPA training yesterday. We get probably 2 or 3 times the amount of required PD for our licensure, because we really are just never done learning. And we've future-proofed our policies, our procedures, our products from the beginning. We have a really strong IT department that's integrated with the rest of our leadership team, and we build systems and products with technology in mind from the beginning rather than retrofit on the other end. So we're ready to go with some of the most up-to-date technology available. So with all that said, and I'm talking really quickly, sorry, it's the northerner in me. For sure, none of us would have done the pivots in the last 4 or 5 months that we did if we hadn't been forced to do it. Teachers really have set the example for all of us on how to turn on a dime, recreating themselves, recreating their lessons, recreating the pacing, the presentation, everything, recreating what we're even considering to be a classroom right now. And I think as from our perspective as sort of our assessment and therapy kind of corner, I think we owe it to the students that we serve to be as innovative as their teachers have been, and looking at how can we adjust to what's happening. So all of this really comes to play because of COVID, but COVID's not the only reason that we have to think about how do we adjust to a disruption in our system. And we're seeing to the east twin hurricanes, and we're seeing to the west forest fires, and that's just this week. So I don't think that we're done with the interruptions to education. I think we're starting to understand that life is going to be very different. Our horizon hasn't moved, it hasn't changed. We're still heading to the same destination. We're still trying to get to the same point as we were before we realized that we needed to make these changes. But I don't know about you, it feels like the bridge was washed out in front of me. And I still need to go where I need to go, and I've got to figure out how to get there. So as a group, I think in education in Texas, we know what we can't do, and we know what we won't do. And I think that it's really time for us to talk about really all that's left, what we can do.
So speaking of that, and speaking of innovation, when the pandemic began, as a company, we looked at our staff and we looked at our processes and realized that, we were struggling to figure out how to continue to serve students in special education, which of course is our very top priority. So we started, brainstorming and looking at ways that we could continue to do that. And so we realized that if we could develop a remote system for all the things that we already do, we could provide a way to continue with special education support, despite location, despite circumstance, despite, the pandemic in general. So we developed processes for things such as remote assessments, counseling, speech therapy, supervision, consultation, program reviews, and really so much more, but those are sort of the biggies that we've been focusing on. So what we can do as a company for LEAs is a couple of things. We can train LEAs to set up their own system for remote evaluations and services. We've developed a model that takes districts from sort of planning through implementation. We can show you how to do it, give you the tools that you need, or give you the information you need. And really, it really is about information more than tools, so that you can train your own staff and you can move forward from there. So that's one service that we can offer. We can also provide those remote services ourselves. All of our staff are trained in the delivery of remote assessment, all of the things that we just talked about: speech therapy, counseling, instruction evaluations, etc. So if you are short-staffed, if you are overwhelmed, if you have a backlog of things that need to get done, we have staff that can come in and provide those services remotely. Every service that we offer really begins with a good conversation. I've held, I don't know how many Zoom meetings at this point with various school districts really all over the country to talk about what we can do and how we can help and what your specific needs are as an LEA. And we design sort of a customized plan in the way of a virtual PD to help with those things. So I think the important thing to remember, and I know that we all think this way, is remembering that this is really about education for the kids, and our special education kids, are struggling as much, if not more so, than our regular education kids. And we think it's super important to stay focused on how to help those students. Providing continuity means equal access to quality services, and that's first and foremost on our agenda. We think it's important and to acknowledge that remote services really reduce barriers for students and for staff. We can support schools' sort of ongoing responsibilities in locating and serving students with disabilities. Child find has not gone away. The rules have not changed. We still have an obligation to find those students who may be eligible for special education and to provide services for them. And this is a way that we can overcome that obstacle. We can provide a resource for sort of those low incidence disabilities. Susan mentioned earlier, that's something that we've always sort of had a passion for, those low incidence disabilities, bilingual students, schools in remote locations, and just those sort of historically hard to solve issues. We've actually found a way to overcome a lot of those things by developing a remote assessment procedure for a lot of the things that we do. That almost happened by accident. We were really looking to solve the problem of the pandemic situation, and it sort of morphed into all these new and different ways of solving other problems that we've always struggled with. And really, at the end of the day, we're looking for the safest way to provide special education services that keeps adults and children safe. And it's certainly safer to do things remotely than it is to do things face-to-face. So how it works is there are no additional costs involved because it's really just using the equipment that schools already own. And I think that's an important thing as we're talking about a time when budgets are being cut and everybody's sort of stretched them with how to use the resources that they have. There really are virtually no additional costs involved in doing the things that we do. The training is pretty minimal because the professionals really are just using the skill sets they already have. So if you know how to give your standardized test, if you know how to develop your lesson plan, if you know how to build a battery for whatever it is you want to do, whatever therapy service you've offered before, you're still going to use that skill set. We're just going to teach you how to do it in an alternate way. We've really found a lot of benefit in the ability for our professionals across disciplines to collaborate on how to work with students together. Speech can sometimes work with OT with a student. Speech and LSSP, of course, can work together very easily. There's a convenience factor, right, to being able to do things virtually that sort of was always posed some problems for us before. And now, especially now that we're in August and we're at the beginning of a new school year, we've learned that most school districts are actually providing computers and even Wi-Fi access to the students. So where technology in the beginning of this on the student end was an obstacle to overcome, anymore that's not nearly as big of an obstacle. And we found that that's really something that's easily solved. Thank you to the LEAs for that.
Yes, thank you for that.
huge benefit. And speaking of benefits, the other benefits are that it reduces the amount of compensatory services owed. I know that's a hot topic right now and a sensitive topic, and everybody's struggling with that idea of how am I going to fix this and go back in time and give these kids what they needed. It can really reduce that backlog of evaluations that have been accruing from mid-March to now. There are some districts who were not able to do any evaluations at all, depending on location, circumstance, things like that. So they started the year with a backlog of hundreds of evaluations, in addition to the new students, who are being referred as we start school. It's been very convenient to schedule these evaluations ahead of time with the other professionals by simply reaching out to the teacher and asking, what day next week can I have Johnny for an evaluation? He won't be in your classroom, your Zoom room for that day. And it's very easy to schedule that kind of thing. And really, I think as a parent and a professional, it's really sort of this idea of a solid plan B when face-to-face services are not possible. Here we are in August. I think we all thought and hoped that things would be somewhat back to normal. We'd all be back to school. We'd be able to go back to face-to-face evaluations, but that's not happening and that's not where we are. So it is an absolute must to have a solid plan B for all school districts to continue to support kids in special education. There's so much more to say about us, so much more to say about the services we offer. I hope that you'll visit our website and see, all the things that we do and that we can do. And we just look forward to being a resource for any school district in Texas and any ways that we can help.
Diane and I would also like to thank Mr. Prater for the comments that he made earlier, because he referenced some questions that we hear every day. And so I really appreciated Mr. Prater hearing that take on how to handle some things related to emotional disturbance and autism and observations, and appreciating and honoring the clinical judgment of the people that the people on the webinar have hired. So I was glad to hear that. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
So you guys did get one question.
Okay.
Only one?
So, well, it's not an easy question. So, are the evaluators using norm reference standardized tests created for face-to-face administration via a virtual medium, or are they using instruments created for virtual administration?
We are using the standardized tests in a virtual medium in a non-standardized way. And that is the question that comes up a lot. And our response to that is standardized testing in this day and age is not a thing anymore. There is no such thing as standardized testing. None of these tests were normed during a pandemic. None of these tests were normed to be given through PPE or through a sneeze guard or with gloves on. There is no standardized testing that's being completed right now. So this is just another way to give a standardized test, just like you might alter your way of giving it through PPE or behind a plexiglass shield.
And we are using them with the blessing of the test producer.
Absolutely.
The test publisher, and even using them with alternate stimulus materials developed by the test publisher to sort of eliminate some of the validity issues you might have with maybe like a document camera and an easel.
And it kind of goes back to what Mr. Prater said. We're acknowledging that, right? We're not suggesting that what giving a remote assessment is standardized or completely valid. It is part of one piece of information that's part of the big picture of that student. If it doesn't match, it's probably not useful, and you're probably going to have to conclude that the testing wasn't what didn't produce the results that it should have, and that when you're able to test the student in person, that would be the recommendation. So we acknowledge that, and I think one of the things we provide in the training is making sure that you document and report that in your test interpretation through your report writing. You acknowledge, you detail what you did that was different from the standardized way that test should be given and how it might have affected the results.
Yeah, the degree to which the results might be affected.
Exactly.
I just want to weigh in on that. We've been pretty consistent in the last few weeks with our messaging around this, and that exactly that even though that there isn't the standardized testing, anytime you administer a standardized test right now, you're going to be doing that same thing, because you're going to be using methods and different things that are not PPE, even if it's face-to-face, whatever, that are not necessarily how the test was normed. And so we've talked about the fact of, of course, obviously considering that when you weigh the results of that assessment, but making sure that you have other data pieces to triangulate. That's what Stephen was trying to hit on, making sure that you're looking at lots of other pieces of data and bringing that all together to create that one picture of what the needs of the student are. So
Exactly.
we're in a different world right now, folks, and there's not an option to push pause on all of this until life gets back to normal, because that's a long ways away.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. As it showed, if you have any questions, outreach AIM, and then we shared a lot of materials, or shared a couple materials from them along with the agenda. I also want to thank Kara, who is correcting me in the sending me messages. So I misspoke. So the link we posted in the chat is live, allowing people to register. It's just the virtual workshop does not show up yet. So you can go in and register, you just can't see anything yet. So thanks, Kara in Region 4 for clarifying that for us. And that's all we have today. And we've been addressing the Q&A as it comes up. So I think that's it for today. And Justin, unless you have anything else, and otherwise we'll see folks next Thursday. Okay, awesome. Stay safe for those that are in the path of the storms. We hope you do well, and we'll see you guys next week.